Hey folks, we're here at NG Atlanta. I'm here with Brad Green from the Angular team.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, I sat through his keynote and then I bugged a bunch of people on his team. But yeah, lots of interesting stuff in your keynote.
Oh, thanks.
Do you want to just give people a quick overview as to where things are with Angular, and then I can poke some of the interesting stuff that you talked about?
Yeah. So in the keynote, I talked about just a couple of things that are coming in the first half of the year. Some of the things you probably heard of already, but I wanted to cover them in some greater detail and give some progress updates. One of them was Bazel, the new build system. And it's actually kind of not new inside Google. We've been using it for over a decade.
Yeah, I didn't realize that when I first heard about it. I'm like, Google made a new build system? No, not quite.
Not new, but we're making it open source and putting all of the investment in it to work outside of the Google ecosystem.
I love hearing that.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's got a lot of nice properties. I think like having this truly incremental build system that can always never redo work is the powerful thing, because it means that I don't have to wait for rebuilds. It's going to be really fast.
Yeah, that's absolutely critical. I mean, if you have a tiny app, you kind of almost don't feel it, right?
For tiny apps, you'll never notice, and it doesn't matter at all.
But, you start getting these big apps, and you only tweak to this or tweak to that, and pretty soon it adds up, right? It's, okay, well, I'm going to go play video games while, Webpack does all of the work all over again, or, whatever you're using.
Yeah, and it's a super hard problem. So, like, Webpack is doing a lot of good innovation in the space, but Bazel has many years of ground under his feet.
Well, that's the other thing that's so great about open source is you bring this out, it builds only the parts that have changed. So these other systems are probably going to pick up on some of that.
Yeah,
and
I think it'll lift all the boats, hopefully.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I've liked generally about the Angular team's approach to a lot of this is that they're like, framework wars, React, Vue, whatever. And you guys all talk to each other, and then everybody benefits from that. And so, it's the same kind of thing here.
Absolutely. We do all talk to each other. It's interesting. Like the people who make frameworks, we all have the same problems, and we're friends for sure. And I think folks on the outside don't understand that actually we all get along with the framework teams. And we wished everybody kind of had a little more sense of camaraderie in the whole thing.
Yeah. Find something that works and work it.
Yeah, for sure.
So you brought up Bazel?
Bazel. So it's interesting. Inside Google, we call it Blaze, but I don't know why. They rearranged the letters just to make it fun, and it's Bazel, B-A-Z-E-L. On the
now it's going to be stuck in my head as Blaze.
Yeah. I probably shouldn't have said that.
Yeah. So one of the other ones that I got excited about was the CDK.
CDK, the component dev kit. So we kind of realized this thing when building the material design components, that even inside Google, every team wants something different out of their components. Some of the base ones we share, but anything of any kind of complexity, the UX folks on every different team want something a little bit different.
Right.
Date picker is one of the famous ones. You're like, no, that needs to work this different way. We're picking a range, and it's really like if I'm picking for flights is different than if I'm picking for AdWords. Is different than I'm picking for something else. And so what we wanted to do was enable everybody to kind of build their own components the way they want by having much more granular building blocks. Things like accessibility and BiDi and the way you pop up overlays and all of these things made available and documented.
Right.
So I mean, it's huge for component developers, people who want to get a leg up and do like the full end-to-end, high-performant, accessible, internationalized versions of their components. I think it's exciting. Yeah,
one of the other use cases that you pointed out was like Material or Bootstrap or different things like that, and so you can just build in whatever classes or whatever you're calling from Bootstrap or Material.
Yeah, I think we hope that it's good. So Angular, we're really lucky that there's a ton of different component libraries on top of it, and we hope everybody uses the CDK to build this, so that we've got one core way to contribute a set of primitives that can build really any look and feel that you want.
Yeah, and then the other thing that I really like about it is then I don't have to go set a whole bunch of properties on my tag.
Right, yes. Yeah, if things are already baked in for me.
Yeah. And so then it's only if I deviate or there are specific types of deviations I want to accommodate, do I have to put those in the property.
That's right. And so, yeah, you'll also see things like we have a material design table, which is sort of the opinionated version. And then we have this base unopinionated version.
Right.
So if you wanted to build your own table, your own sort of wizard or stepper or your own tree or whatever, we've got those sort of core things that have some functionality, but they can look and feel like whatever you want.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then you brought up the rendering engine.
We have a new rendering engine we're working on, yeah. We haven't been talking about it publicly till now, but because I think people wondered, like, what's that all about? And we haven't had our story together, but now I think it's pretty clear what's going to go on. We're calling it ngIvy for no particular reason, but naming's hard, right?
Yeah.
I was trying to get people, like, don't name it, just call it the renderer. But they're like, we like to call it Ivy. I'm like, okay, fine. So I lost that battle.
I thought you were the boss.
That doesn't mean what you think it means.
That is almost always true.
I have one opinion, probably the lowest opinion on the totem pole.
Yeah.
But sometimes I do win things. A couple different things we're trying to do there. One is like shrink the core Angular. So if you wanted to deliver something very small, you could.
Right. Like Angular elements, for example.
Like Angular elements, yeah. If I want to be able to package bits of Angular, like a little applet or individual components, I should be able to do that. And you shouldn't have to care about the size of the thing that does the rendering.
Right.
We want to make a lot. So a lot of it, this is like part of the reason the team's so excited is for us. We're making our lives much simpler by reducing the complexity of how the renderer and the compiler have to interact.
Right.
It's going to translate, I think, into end user benefits because Ivy's built on these sort of a couple different rendering primitives, which are really easy to understand as contrast to what we're doing today. And so when you go to debug something that's been output by the compiler, you're going to have a much better time.
Right.
And even if you want to experiment with the compiler and the debugger, it's going to, and the renderer itself, I think it's going to be much easier for people to build customizations and extensions, and everything else on the Angular ecosystem. So smaller, faster, and faster is the last thing. That on the current compiler, everything kind of needs to be known by the compiler together in one sort of Mondo pass. And in Ivy, we've architected it so that the compiler only needs to look at a single component and can compile that in isolation. So this means that your whole compile will be incremental always. And you will never need to do a full rebuild once you've done a build for your system.
So does that tie back into Bazel, or?
I think it plays really nicely into Bazel because now it can be parallelized. And if you're doing builds on like multiple machines, it can actually happen not just on your desktop, but for your production builds and your CI, it can be parallelized across many, many machines.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Were there any other things you announced that I didn't bring up?
I talked a little bit about the schematics, part of the CLI, as a way for people to customize what the CLI does. And you can use it without the CLI as a way to sort of automate the workflow of your developers.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, anything you can automate, I'm a big fan of that. So.
No, it's so helpful. As long as it doesn't end up like obscuring stuff I need to get at. And I think that's the point of schematics is now you can get at everything top to bottom in the CLI, and you can customize it the way you want.
Yeah, we actually saw that in Uri Shaked's talk, where it was like, look, we have this boiler, it was generated by the CLI. It was the app component. He's like, yep, we're going to delete that, and then we're going to, and so, having
Maybe you could make one that works for you, and you don't have to delete stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, or you're going to pull in other packages, and so you just, you don't have to go type all that in.
Have them there from the get-go. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Makes a ton of sense. And then the second part of your talk was also very interesting about diversity. And, I think you struck a chord that I don't think we see very often, at least with the people that I talk to. Most people either are upset because something horrible has happened to somebody they know, or which is sad. It's really sad.
It is, yeah.
Or, they're just out there and it sounds fair and it seems right, and so that's the extent of the argument. And I was very gratified to see you say, look, we've interviewed these people, there are these articles, there are these studies, this is where it makes a difference, this is where it matters, and I really found that refreshing because it's like, oh, I can go dig into all of this stuff and learn more about this without, asking questions that are going to get me yelled at by somebody who has the other opinion one way or the other.
Yeah. Well, and I kind of tried to pick a tack on this that wasn't really based on belief or ideologies or any, like, what could we all agree on that would be helpful in this ecosystem? And then look, all research is flawed, but like I like the studies, and I hope people read it and come talk to me, or maybe show me some studies that have differing points of view. But I like evidence-based approaches to this whole problem.
Yeah, I completely agree, because ultimately, then if we understand the underlying causes, we understand the people involved, we understand some of the psychology behind it.
Yeah.
Then we can really start to solve these issues instead of just telling everybody to be nice to each other or prescribing specific
we know
things.
that if that was that simple, then we'd all do it.
Right. And, some of the prescriptions that come out, it's like, okay, but does that really make a difference? Do we know? Right?
Right.
Because I want to focus on the areas that really are going to bear fruit.
Yeah.
And it's hard to know that if it's based on an ideology.
Totally.
So
Totally.
very cool. How do you go about looking up stuff like this?
I have a favorite podcast called You Are Not So Smart, and I listed one of the episodes, and it actually turned me on to a lot of the things that I ended up talking about today. And I don't know, I'm a junkie on, the pop psychology books. I listed some other ones in the talk. And TED Talks. Once you start to get into it, it's a slippery slope, and all of a sudden you've wasted like all your weekends for a month on these topics.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Well, on behalf of the entire Angular community, I just want to thank you and everybody else that's involved in bringing us Angular for all you do, both on the technology front and on the community front. Because I also see in a lot of cases, some technologists, they just want to contribute, and then the community kind of does its own thing.
Yeah.
And it feels like you guys are really involved, you really care, and it shows, and it means a lot, I think, to a lot of people, that I can show up to a conference and I can see you guys, especially like at ngConf or Angular Connect, where there are a number of people from the team that are there. And, you show up. I remember one year at ngConf, you were all wearing shirts that said you can sit here or sit next to me or something like that.
Yep.
And it really does come through, not just you guys saying it, but doing it, right? And just being a part of us, right? Instead of kind of being up here and letting the little people do what they do. So
yeah, so I have to thank Igor on the team for kind of setting us on this course, like way early in the Angular days. Part of it was like our strategy to scale, and then we realized it kind of feels good to actually bond meaningfully with people in the world, and now it's hard to stop ourselves. Like we have like really long-term friends in the community, and it's just special to get back together with folks. It's like getting back together with college buddies.
Yep.
So it's super sweet.
Yeah, that's how I feel coming out to these. It's like, oh, I get to see all these people again.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It's always a happy reunion.
Awesome. Well, one last thing I need to do is Progress sponsored my trip out here. I just want to call out to them. Go check out Kendo UI if you're looking for, we talked about some of the component libraries out there.
Yeah, I got some Kendo socks here at the conference.
Nice.
I'm waiting to put those on.
There you go. So big thanks to them. And yeah, they have all kinds of components for all kinds of stuff. I think their data stuff is really the shining thing for me, the charts and the graphs and that they have kind of a smart table spreadsheet kind of component that you can put in, and it's really great. And they have it, we talked about different frameworks. They have their stuff in Angular, Vue, React, and I'm sure they're going to come out with other stuff. So
yeah, nice.
All right, well, thank you, Brad.
Charles, thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.